Chapter 2703. She flipped through the materials in front of her and saw that most of them were only small pieces of information. They were not very complete. After flipping through them, she could not help but frown. The manager of the treasure house saw that Fengjiu had looked through the materials and then tossed them back. It was as if nothing caught his eye. He could not help but exchange glances with the old man beside him. After a pause, he asked, "Ghost Doctor, did you see anything that caught your eye?" "This information is only information that most people know. It is not very detailed and does not match what I want," Fengjiu said plainly. He was not in the mood to continue reading. As if thinking of something, she looked at the manager and the old man. "Is there anyone from the Guo clan among them?" "The Guo clan?" The old man thought for a moment and said, "The Guo clan did not give us any information about the Stairway of Immortality. They only said that they would tell us in detail after meeting the Ghost Doctor." Hearing this, Fengjiu said, "Then let them in. Send the others back first." Thus, the manager went outside and invited Old Master Guo and Guo Xining in. Old Master Guo did not seem very surprised, as if he knew that he would definitely meet the owner of this pill. After entering the room, the grandfather and grandson were surprised to see a man in a red robe and a mask sitting lazily on the chair. They thought that the person who could concoct such a pill would be an old man. They did not expect him to be so young. "This is the Ghost Doctor," the manager said. He left the room for the three of them and then left with the old man. "Please have a seat," Fengjiu said with a trace of coldness in her lazy voice. When they heard that voice, the two of them felt their hearts skip a beat. They felt that the voice was somewhat familiar, as if they had heard it somewhere before. "How much do you know about the Stairway of Immortality?" Fengjiu asked. His gaze fell on Old Master Guo. After the two of them sat down, Old Master Guo looked at Fengjiu and told her about the Stairway of Immortality. "In the end," he said, "although the Stairway of Immortality can only be climbed by immortal emperors, I went up once before. However, I was beaten down before I could reach the gate." He paused and pulled out an item from his sleeve. "Ghost Doctor, we sincerely wish to trade for that pill. This is a map of the route to the Stairway of Immortality. There are also some important points recorded on it. I dare say that other than our Guo clan, only a few hidden clans or Mount Tai of the three sects would know of this information." Fengjiu took the item and looked at it, of the map. She closed the map and picked up a small booklet with the words barter written on it. She saw that the items she wanted to barter for were 3 rare and precious spiritual medicines. Seeing this, the corner of her lips curled up. "Elder Guo, I like what you picked." Hearing her call him Old Master Guo, surprise flashed across his eyes. He looked at Fengjiu and said, "He, the Ghost Doctor is an expert in the art of alchemy. I think no treasure can compare to rare and precious spiritual medicines. Coincidentally, I have a few precious spiritual medicines at home. I will trade them with you." Chapter 2704. Therefore, the old man stepped forward to examine the pills for them and let them take a closer look. In the end, both parties exchanged items. It was obvious that Old Master Guo was secretly relieved when he put away the pills. Old Master Guo and Guo Xining were escorted out. They avoided the gazes of the people in front of them and quietly left through the back door. Fengjiu also left after paying the commission. She went to a secluded place and flashed into the space. She took off her mask, changed into her green robes, and walked out of an alley. She didn't go straight back to the Xie mansion. Instead, she found a food stall on the main street and sat down to eat. On another main street, the grandfather and grandson pair strolled slowly as if they were taking a stroll. Guo Xining saw that his grandfather's expression was slightly relaxed and he had a smile on his face. He seemed to be in a good mood. Thus, he asked, "Grandfather, that Ghost Doctor in red, did she look like Fingzhou? Old Master Guo paused for a moment, then continued walking. His old voice carried a hint of contemplation. She did look like her, but that person was an alchemist, and an extremely high-level one at that. Fingzhou's abilities are not weak, so how could he be an alchemist? He walked slowly, his eyes looking forward. But that voice sounded similar, but the aura seemed to have changed. That's why I'm thinking, could it be someone related to Fingzhou? Perhaps, it's someone from his clan. Hearing this, Guo Xining's eyes flashed. He didn't say anything else. That's right. His strength was already so powerful, how could he still be an alchemist? If that was the case, then it was too unbelievable. As the grandfather and grandson pair walked, they saw Fingzhou sitting at a food stall at a corner. Seeing him, both of them were surprised. "Grandfather, that's Fingzhou." Guo Xining looked at the green figure at the stall and said, what a coincidence to meet you here." Old Master Guo stroked his beard and walked up. "Young Master Feng, I didn't expect to see you here." Fingzhou turned around when he heard their voices. Seeing that it was them, he nodded. "We came out for a walk and to eat something. Do you two want to eat too?" "All right." Old Master Guo sat down, and Guo Xining followed suit. To their surprise, Fingzhou stood up as soon as they sat down. "Take your time. I still have something to do, so I'll head back first," she said with a smile. After paying the bill, she ordered some snacks for them and said, "The food from this stall is not bad. Try it." Seeing Fingzhou turn and leave, Grandpa Guo shook his head and laughed. "Is he unwilling to be close to us? I didn't expect that there would be a day when I would be despised by others." Guo Xining didn't say anything. He just picked up the chopsticks and handed it to his grandfather. "Grandfather, try it." Thus, after the two of them ate some food here, they returned to the side courtyard, planning to find a time to pay a visit to the Xie family. After returning to the Xie family, Fingzhou went back to the wing room to study the map carefully. He memorized the route and marked what old Master Guo said. At noon, Sha Yutang knocked on her door. "Xiao Zhou, Xiao Zhou." She opened the door and looked at him standing outside, asking, "What's the matter?" Chapter 2705. Hearing this, she shook her head. "No, if you want to go, just go." "Well, I'll go and talk to my mother first," he said, then turned and left. Fingzhou came out, stretched his muscles and bones in the yard, and called, "Silver." The silver wolf in the room rushed out, squatted beside Fingzhou and looked at him. "Let's go. Let's go to the front." Fingzhou bent down and touched its head, then stepped out. He was going to say goodbye to the beautiful woman. In the front hall, after listening to her son's words, the beautiful woman thought for a while and asked people to refuse the people sent by the Ruan family. "I went to the Ruan family, and my two children were almost lost. It's better to stay away from them," the beautiful woman said, but she was unwilling. "It's just that the third miss of the Ruan family acted like that. I can't let her go like this." Ruan harmed her children, but nothing happened. No matter how tolerant she was, she couldn't tolerate this kind of thing. Xia Yan, who was sitting next to her, patted her hand and said, Ruan's temper is like that. Even if we don't deal with her, someone will deal with her in the future. It's not worth getting angry for such a person. What's more, the two children are blessed by God. It's enough for them to come back safely." Hearing this, the beautiful woman looked at the two children sitting below and smiled. "Yes, my husband is right. It's enough for Yutang and Xiaoshi to come back safely. Xiao Zhou is here." Xie Shirsi, who was sitting below and playing with the spirit beast egg in her hand, saw Fingzhou outside. She was overjoyed and quickly stepped forward. "Xiao Zhou, why are you here?" I'm here for something. As Phone 9 spoke, she looked at the two people in the main seats in the hall and said, Master, Madam, I want to say goodbye. As soon as these words came out, several people in the hall were stunned. The first to react was Shy Yutang. What? You're leaving. You have no relatives or friends. Where are you going? Shy Yutang asked in a hurry, obviously not expecting that he came to say goodbye. Xiao Zhou, are you leaving now? We just came back and we're already leaving. Please don't go. Wouldn't it be better if he stayed at our house? Xia Shirsi said reluctantly. Xia Yan and his wife knew that he was not an ordinary person and would leave their home sooner or later. It was impossible for him to stay here forever. Therefore, when they heard that he wanted to leave, they were not too surprised. Xiao Zhou, you guys just came back. You haven't even had a good rest. Even if you want to leave, you don't have to be in a hurry. She glanced at her son and daughter and continued, besides, they also hope that you can stay for a few more days. That's right, that's right. Little Zhou, we haven't been to many places in the city. Even if you want to leave, you should stay for a few more days before leaving. Xia Shirsi said as she pulled on his sleeve. Her eyes were filled with reluctance as she looked at him. Fengjiu thought for a while, then nodded. All right then. I'll stay for 2 more days and leave after that. Then let's go out and play. Let's go to the city to play and find delicious food. Xia Shirsi said, looking at her brother, Brother, let's go together. Okay. Shy Yutang said, and the three of them went out, discussing where to play. Chapter 2706. I've been worried about the 2 children these days. I almost forgot that your birthday is in 2 days. Xia Yan said and nodded, well, you can arrange it. On the other side, the 3 people who went out of the mansion were followed by a small silver wolf. At first glance, the majestic Wolf King was really like a puppy, wagging its tail and raising its head, following Fengjiu step by step. Its proud and pleasing appearance attracted some girls and children on the street to look back from time to time. Where are we going? Xia Shirsi asked and looked at them. Men rarely go shopping. You have the final say on where to go shopping. Shy Yutang said, looking at Fengjiu. He hesitated and asked, Xiao Zhou, where are you going? Will you come back in the future? I have something to do, so I won't come back here. Fengjiu said, walking slowly. Will we see you again in the future? Xia Shirsi asked. Shy Yutang glanced at her and said, he won't come back. How can we see him? Of course, we won't see him. Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled, but did not speak. I see. Xia Shirsi looked at Fengjiu, thought for a moment, and said, even if we can't see each other in the future, I won't forget your Xiao Zhou. Thank you. Fengjiu said with a smile. By the way, it's my mother's birthday in 2 days. Let's buy something for her. And I also want to buy jewelry. I heard that there is a big jewelry store in the city. Let's go and have a look. Okay. Fengjiu said. After they inquired about the location, they went there. After shopping, they went shopping and didn't go back until it was dark. However, as soon as they entered the mansion, they heard from the housekeeper that Madam was looking for them, so they went to the backyard. Mother, why are you looking for us? Xia Shirsi ran forward and sat down beside her. The beautiful woman looked at Fengjiu and said, Xiao Zhou, Yutang, the 4th Miss of the Ruan clan has sent someone to send an invitation to invite you to her residence tomorrow. Her gaze carried a trace of astonishment as she looked at the two. When did you meet this 4th Miss Ruan? Shy Yutang was stunned when he heard this. Miss Ruan. He looked at Fengjiu and didn't remember for a long time. He asked, do we know each other? Fengzhou's eyes moved slightly. That young girl from the bamboo forest, Ruan Ruyun. Oh, it's her. Sha Yutang suddenly understood and said, however, we have no friendship with her. We have only met her once at most. This fourth Miss Ruan is the direct descendant of the Ruan clan with outstanding strength. It is said that her body's hidden disease was cured somehow, and her talent was found to be excellent. Now she has been cultivated as a talent of the Ruan clan. The beautiful woman glanced at them and said, these days when you were away, the Ruan clan took care of a lot of things for this fourth Mississippi. She paused for a moment before continuing, this is the invitation she sent over, and she only invited you. You weren't at home earlier, so I accepted the invitation. You can see for yourselves if you want to go. If you don't want to go, it doesn't matter. I'm going to hold a birthday banquet. You can invite her to our residence then. Chapter 2707. Well, let's invite her to our house. I don't want to go to their house anymore. Sha Yutang said and looked at Fengzhou, what do you think? Is that okay? It's up to you. She was just a person she had only met once, so she didn't pay much attention to her. If the beautiful woman hadn't mentioned her today, she would have forgotten her existence. Well, that's it. Sha Yutang said, and then stepped forward to his mother and took out a gift. Mother, this is the birthday gift I bought for you. I also have, Mother, I bought you jewelry. Xie Shirsi said with a smile, and also gave her something. Hearing this, the beautiful woman laughed happily. It's not time yet, is it? Are you in a hurry to give me a gift? She took the gift and put it away. Mother, don't you open it and see if you like it? Xie Shirsi asked, but she didn't open it. No matter what you give me, I like it. I'll see it when I go back to my room. The beautiful woman said with a smile and looked at her daughter, didn't you say it was jewelry? You can try it in the mirror when you go back to your room. Then I'll go back to my room with you. Xie Shirsi took her hand and said. I'll go back first. Fengzhou said and left first. Xie Shirsi and Xie Shirsi stayed to accompany the beautiful woman and help prepare for the birthday banquet. 2 days later, in the morning. It was the birthday banquet of the beautiful woman. Early in the morning, the guests came one after another, and the children of the main family also came at the invitation of Sha Yutang. It could be said that most of the people who came today were teenagers. Even if there were, it was only the madams of each mansion who came with their children. The beautiful woman just wanted to have fun and make the children happy, so she invited some familiar people. In addition to 1 or 2 madams of the outer mansion, there were several people of the main family of the Xie family. According to what their mother said, Sha Yutang and Xie Shirsi took on the task of taking care of the guests today, but Fengzhou was nowhere to be seen. As the guests arrived one after another, the fourth young lady of the Ruan family also came. To Sha Yutang's surprise, the third young lady of the Ruan family also came. Looking at the third young lady of the Ruan family, not only Sha Yutang but also Xie Shirsi did not give her a good look. Brother Xie, it's really you. When Ruan Ruyun saw Sha Yutang, she couldn't help but step forward happily. She came to him like a familiar person and looked at him with a smile. Brother Xie, where is that brother? She looked around, but didn't see the cyan figure. Sha Yutang looked at her in amazement. The mark of fear on the face of the girl who scared him in the bamboo forest was gone. Her whole face was as smooth as jade, and her delicate and outstanding facial features made her look very different. However, there was one thing that was not quite the same. The young girl in the bamboo forest had always felt inferior because of her appearance, but today, Ruan Ruyun had swept away the inferiority between her brows in the past and became radiant. Perhaps this was what made him feel very different. After all, if he didn't see it with his own eyes, it was impossible to believe that a person could change so much in just a few days. Please come in. Xiaojiu hasn't come out yet. Shai Yutang said and asked his sister to take them in. Chapter 2708. When the Ruan sisters entered, they couldn't hide the curiosity in their eyes. Why is everything in your family placed together? Ruan Ruyun looked at the various food and wine placed on the tables in the middle of the garden. She couldn't help but find it strange. Were all banquets like this? Her family didn't seem to be like this. After all, her Ruan family had held 1 or 2 banquets in the past few days, and they had been held for her. This banquet was held for my mother by me, big brother, and Xiaojiu. Isn't it different from before? Xia Shirsi said with a smile. Here, you have to take whatever you want to eat and pour whatever you want to drink. We also have some games to play. Perhaps it was because they had never seen a banquet like this before, but the young girls and youths were very happy. They moved through the garden and chatted. Here, the men and women were not separated. They were all gathered together, so it was much livelier. No matter if it was youths or young girls, because they were more confident in front of the opposite sex, they tried their best to show their most elegant and proper side. Because the Ruan sisters had good looks and the Ruan family was a large family, they were surrounded when they came. Even Xia Shirsi was pushed to the side. When Fengzhou came over, he saw the youths in the garden surrounding the 2 young girls. Their words were full of flattery. Of the 2 young girls, one was Ruan San, and the other, her eyes flashed slightly. The other was Ruan Si, Ruan Yunru. He hadn't seen her for a few days, but she had changed a lot. She was surrounded in the middle and chatted with others. She was like a fish in water. He didn't go over and only walked to a place with fruits. He took a fruit and leaned on the side to eat while watching. Ruan Yunru, who was chatting with others, found him and walked over in pleasant surprise. So you were here. I was looking for you. She went forward and saw the youth in front of her was still wearing ordinary green clothes. She thought of the news she had heard and her heart couldn't help but tremble. It seemed that he was the chief steward of the Xie Manor. Such a young chief steward, and he knew how to treat her face. He also knew about her body. Big brother Xiaojiu, my face is better. Thank you. She smiled and squinted her eyes to express her thanks. What big brother Xiaojiu? How can a servant be worthy of you calling him brother? Don't break the rules for no reason. Ruan San walked over and lightly snorted as he swept a glance at Fengzhou. Since you're here, then have fun. As Fengzhou spoke, he turned around and walked out, not bothering to argue with Ruan San. Third elder sister, I'll be right back. Ruan Ruyun said and caught up with Fengzhou. Fengzhou went to the kitchen and had someone deliver a few dishes and wine before returning to the courtyard. Ruan Si followed and looked around. When she came to the courtyard, she looked around and asked in surprise, Brother Xiaojiu lives here? This was clearly not a servant's courtyard. Why are you following me? Fengzhou raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Yes. She nodded and looked at him to say, Brother Xiaojiu, I heard that you are the chief steward here. Our Ruan family's clan head said that you are a capable person. It's too much of an injustice for you to be a chief steward in a branch of the Xie family. If you want, you can come to our Ruan family. The clan head said that you can be a guest of our Ruan family. The treatment will definitely be better than here. Chapter 2709. Ruan Ruyun looked at him. She did not know what he meant. Did he agree? Or not? Thus, she lowered her eyes and played with the corner of her beautiful dress. Brother Little Joe, I was brought out from the bamboo courtyard. The people in the clan are very good to me now. The clan leader even said that the resources given to me must be the best. Now, the courtyard that I live in often has people coming to see me, talk to me, and even give me gifts. I know. If it wasn't for Brother Xiaozhou, I would still be in the bamboo forest right now. As she spoke, she seemed to remember something. She looked up at Fengzhou and said, Brother Xiaozhou, my master was killed by the old ancestor. Just 2 nights ago, the old ancestor and the clan leader used some unknown method to kill my master. As she spoke, she lowered her head again. No one outside knows about this, and no one leaked any information. My master, such a powerful person, died. Fengzhou listened quietly and calmly looked at the young girl in front of him. When she spoke of this matter, her expression would suddenly darken, then sigh in relief, then become melancholy. Brother Xiaozhou. She had just spoken when Fengzhou interrupted her. We've only met once, so we can't be considered familiar. You're the 4th young miss of the Ruan family, so don't call me brother. As Fengzhou spoke, he saw a servant girl bring in wine and food from outside the courtyard. He indicated for the servant girl to put down the wine and food and retreat. She poured the wine and took a sip. She did not look at Ruan Ruyun and only said, This is the inner courtyard. You can go back. Hearing this, Ruan Ruyun looked at Fengzhou and said, You're not willing to go to the Ruan family as a guest? Not interested. Fengzhou said as he gently swirled the wine cup in his hand. But this is the first task the clan leader gave me. If I don't do it well, the clan leader will be disappointed. She bit her lower lip and looked at him with a troubled expression. What does that have to do with me? Fengzhou looked at her and asked carelessly. Of course it's your business. It's because of you that I came out of the bamboo forest. Originally, they all ignored me and didn't like me, but now they all like me and treat me very well. This is all because of you. She looked at Fengzhou and said, I don't want to disappoint them. I want them to always like me like this. Hearing this, Fengzhou, who was eating with her chopsticks, paused. She looked at the girl in front of her seriously. She was wearing a beautiful dress made of fine gauze, with tassels hanging around her waist. She was wearing a bracelet on her wrist. It was not an ordinary bracelet but a spatial bracelet. Further up, there was an exquisite pearl necklace around her neck. The earrings dangling from her earlobes flickered with a mesmerizing light. The veil that covered the girl's face due to her ugliness had long been removed, revealing a jade-like delicate and beautiful face. Her facial features were outstanding, and her eyes were innocent and natural. The inferiority between her brows had disappeared. What replaced it was an arrogance that could not be concealed, as well as a sense of superiority that made people dislike her. It had to be said that this girl was the same as the majority of the daughters of influential families. She had a high and mighty attitude. Compared to her inferiority self, she was now more dazzling and looked more like a daughter of an influential family. However, the girl in front of her did not have the kind of thoughts that made her want to help her. She only felt displeasure. Chapter 27:10. It's not that I've changed. It's just that my identity and status are different now. I like this version of me. Everyone in the clan likes this version of me. Ruan Ruyun looked at Fengzhou as she spoke. You'll help me, right? You've already helped me before. You can help me again. Fengzhou shook his head. I can't help you, and I don't want to help you. You should leave. She didn't look at her anymore. Instead, she poured wine and drank. She planned to give the beautiful woman a birthday gift after the banquet ended. Then, she prepared to leave. She suddenly took a step forward. No, you can help me. You just have to come with me to the Ruan family. Instead of being a steward of the Xia family, wouldn't it be better to come to our Ruan family? Feng 9 focused on eating and didn't pay any attention to her. The silver wolf lying in the corner of the courtyard watched this scene. A trace of viciousness flashed across its eyes. This human had guts. She actually dared to speak to its master like this. If you don't leave, I'll get someone to ask you to leave. At that time, I'm afraid it won't look good for you. Fengjiu said indifferently. He shook his head inwardly. People were fickle and insatiable. Hearing this, Ruan Ruyun's expression changed. She was a little agitated and her eyes became angry. She shouted at Fengjiu in a shrill voice. Why won't you help me? You can clearly help me. You should help me. That sudden shrill voice was filled with agitation and anger. Fengjiu was stunned and looked at her in astonishment. It was fine if this person was fickle, but how did her mentality become so twisted and perverted? In just a few days, she could change someone like this. Or could it be that suppressing her inferiority complex in the past was only one side of her, and this was her true personality? Now that she had the protection of her family, and some of the clan leaders treated her differently, the other side of her was gradually being exposed. However, what made her even more dumbfounded was that she stared at her with an inexplicable smile. Suddenly, she reached out and tore her own clothes. The sound of clothes being torn was heard. The high-quality fabric was torn apart just like that. A good new dress was ruined because of this. Ruan Ruyun looked at Feng 9, who was looking at her in astonishment with an inexplicable expression. She chuckled softly. Even if he is the chief steward, he is just a servant. What do you think will happen if he sees you tearing my clothes and trying to do something to me? As she spoke, she loosened her shirt and tore off one of her sleeves, revealing her snow-white skin. She also messed up her coiled hair a little. She looked her up and down and finally smiled with satisfaction. Last time at home, I saw my third sister frame someone she didn't like. That person wasn't willing to listen to her. In the end, both of her legs were broken and she was thrown out of the city. She said innocently while looking at Fengjiu. You're so smart, but you're not willing to be used by me or enter my Ruan family. Then I can only think of a way. I think, when I call for help later, the people in front will definitely run over. You bullied me and took advantage of me. My family won't let you off easily. Brother Xiaozhou, don't you think so? Chapter 27:11. What was going on in that brain of hers? She actually thought of using such a despicable scheme to frame her. Looking at her tearing her clothes and making it look like she was being bullied and taken advantage of, she really wanted to tell her that she didn't need to tear. She was a woman, and even if she took off her clothes and put the two of them together, she wouldn't be able to take advantage of her. However, seeing her having so much fun, she felt that it was fine. Let's see how she tormented herself. In any case, in the end, she would definitely torment herself to death. The silver wolf that was lying on the side had already sat up, but it was as small as a puppy and had no presence at all. Ruan Ruyun didn't take it seriously and naturally didn't see that the silver wolf was sharpening its knife, looking as if it couldn't wait to pounce on her and bite her to death. Seeing that Fengjiu didn't take her seriously, Ruan Ruyun gritted her teeth. You really don't agree. You have to know that as long as I call for help, even if the Xia couple wants to protect you, they won't be able to. At that time, you'll fall into the hands of our Ruan family. Fengjiu continued eating and ignored her. Seeing this, she took a few steps back, and a trace of determination flashed across her eyes. In the next moment, she shouted at the top of her lungs, "Help! Help!" After all, she was a golden core cultivator, so her voice naturally contained spiritual aura and easily spread out. Even the people in the garden could clearly hear the echo of her voice. The people in front were all in harmony, especially because Old Master Gua and Gua Xining happened to be visiting today, and Xia Yan was receiving them. However, who knew that they would suddenly hear a cry for help? Xia Yan was stunned for a moment, and ordered the housekeeper beside him, "Go and see what's going on." In the garden, the beautiful woman and the others were also stunned for a moment when they heard the sound. Someone asked curiously, "Why is there a cry for help?" "It's my fourth sister's voice." Ruan-san was stunned for a moment before he exclaimed and ran towards the direction of the sound. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other in astonishment and quickly ran towards the direction of the cry for help. Xia Shirsi was running with the crowd and almost fell when someone suddenly bumped into her. At this time, a pair of hands reached out to support her. "Be careful." A gentle voice came. She looked up and couldn't help but be happy. "Brother Gua." "Thank you, Brother Gua." She had just heard that they were coming, and she hadn't had time to see him. "Are you all right?" Gua Xining asked gently. "I'm fine," Xia Shirsi said with a smile. "Why didn't I see Fingzhou?" he asked. "Ah. Little Jiu is with the Ruan's fourth young Mississippi." That cry for help belongs to the Ruan's fourth young Mississippi. "I don't know what happened. Let's quickly go take a look." As she spoke, she didn't even think before pulling him to the rear courtyard. Gua Xining was slightly stunned after hearing her words. Feng Nine and Miss Ruan were in the backyard. When Shai Yutang, who was also going to the backyard, heard the cry for help, he couldn't help but curse in a low voice. "I knew that the people of the Ruan family wouldn't be good." However, when everyone came to the backyard and saw the scene in the backyard, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded and couldn't recover for a long time. Chapter 27:12. When Miss Ruan saw this situation, she couldn't help but gasp. She quickly ran forward to help her up. "Little Four, what's wrong with you?" However, before she could touch her, she screamed and exclaimed, "Brother Xiaozhou, Brother Xiaozhou, don't." As soon as these words came out, the faces of the people around suddenly changed, and their eyes fell on the young man in cyan who was eating and drinking indifferently. They knew this young man. His name was Fingzhou, and he was the housekeeper of the house. This man and woman were alone in this courtyard, and Miss Ruan looked like she was being bullied, which made people's imagination run wild. Could it be that this young man in cyan took advantage of Miss Ruan? Thinking about it, it was possible. After all, he was a young man. It was normal if something happened that he couldn't control. However, this girl was not an ordinary person. She was the Ruan family's Miss Ruan. Recently, she was in the limelight. If something happened to her, the Ruan family would not let it go. For a moment, the surrounding people discussed in low voices. When Xia Shirsi, who had squeezed her way forward from the back, heard this, she rushed forward and heavily pushed the Ruan fourth young miss. She angrily scolded, "What nonsense are you talking about? Xiao Jiu is not that kind of person. If you talk nonsense again, I'll slap your mouth." "Little sure." Shai Yutang stepped forward and pulled her, indicating that she should not be impulsive. With a gloomy face, he stared at Miss Ruan with a stern look. He said word by word, "You can eat whatever you want, but don't talk nonsense. Xiao Jiu is not someone you can slander." Gua Xining, who was standing at the back of the crowd, looked at this scene with slight surprise. He looked at the crying girl and saw that her clothes were torn and she was in a sorry state. Moreover, there was a look of panic on her face. From time to time, she looked at Fengzhou as if she wanted to say something but stopped herself. Fengzhou would take advantage of her. To be honest, he didn't believe it. "What's the matter?" The beautiful woman's voice came from behind. Everyone turned around and saw that she had arrived with a few other women, so they all opened up a path for her. "Mother, that Ruan Si is slandering Xiao Jiu for bullying him." Xia Shirsi quickly ran to her side and said angrily. At this moment, she saw that everyone was crowding around the courtyard, and many pairs of eyes were looking at her from time to time. She put down her chopsticks and called for a maidservant to take the dishes away, leaving only the wine. Then, she looked at the beautiful woman. I was drinking here, and this fourth Miss Ruan was tearing her clothes and screaming for help. The corners of Fengzhou's lips curled up, and he explained the situation in a few words. Nonsense. My fourth sister is a girl, how could she do such a thing to slander you? Clearly, you were the one who wanted to do something to her. Ruan San said angrily. She stared at Fengzhou with her beautiful eyes and said, You even dare to touch my Ruan family's people. Today, I will dig out your eyes and let you have eyes but fail to recognize people. Hearing this, Fengzhou raised his eyebrows, and a trace of coldness flashed in his deep eyes. He glanced at Ruan Si with a faint smile and said, Fourth Miss Ruan, don't cry. Tell me, what did I do to you? Chapter 27:13. Fourth Miss Ruan, we're not very familiar with each other. I don't dare to assume that you're calling me brother. Fengzhou said casually. Looking at her slightly changed expression, he smiled and asked, I'm curious. How did I scare you? Seeing that she kept retreating with her head lowered and did not look back, Fengzhou patted his forehead in realization. Oh, right. You should be stalling for time now. I think that the person secretly protecting you should have already gone back to report, right? It won't be long before the Ruan family comes knocking. Hearing this, the surrounding people's expressions were indescribable. No one knew what they were thinking. When the beautiful woman saw this, she arranged for everyone to leave first. Clearly, she did not wish for the matter to become too big and ugly. After all, it was the Xia family. The host had already apologized and asked them to leave first, so everyone left first. However, they did not go far. Instead, after exiting the Xia family's main door, they found a place not far from here to sit idly. They felt that today's matter would not be settled so easily. After all, the Ruan family would not let it go so easily. Indeed, not long after, the Ruan family came knocking. However, before they could enter the Xia family's main door, over 10 people walked out. Father. Ruan San saw that the person who came was her father and could not help but call out happily. Ruan Si, who had been weeping softly with her head lowered, heard the voice and looked up. She could not help but quickly walk forward. Father. She sobbed softly and threw herself into her father's arms. All right, it's fine now. Go to the side. Father will seek justice for you. The Ruan family head said in a deep voice. His sharp gaze swept across the crowd and landed on Fengzhou to size him up. Then, he looked at the beautiful woman who walked out from behind. How does Madame Xia plan to give us an explanation? He did not ask Fengzhou but directly asked the mistress of the Xia family. Ruan family head, there must be a misunderstanding. Xiao Jiu is not that kind of person. The beautiful woman said gently and walked to Fengzhou's side. Misunderstanding. Humph. He snorted heavily. Could it be that my daughter is slandering you? He's just a servant. My daughter's body is priceless. Would she do something that would ruin her reputation for the sake of slandering a servant? Xia Yan, who was originally entertaining the old master of the Ruan family, heard that someone from the Ruan family had come and also came out. The Xia family head who heard the news also came over. Seeing this scene, the Xia family head was slightly startled and asked. What's going on? Since the Ruan family head, why don't you come in and have a cup of tea? Your Xia family's tea isn't that good. How do you think this matter? How do you think this matter? How do you think a servant should this matter? How? 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 To standing. Him. T. At this moment, Xia Yan walked out from behind and said, "Family head, he's not a servant of our family. He's our guest." Hearing this, the Xia family head glanced at him and then looked at Fingzhou. "This happened because of you. Don't you think you should say something?" Chapter 27:14. She stood up and looked at the Ruan clan head. How does the Ruan clan head intend to deal with this? The Ruan clan head looked at the youth in front of him and recalled what his fourth daughter had told him. It was because of this youth that they realized that their neglected and forgotten daughter had such a physique, and that her strength and talent were higher than those of her age in the clan. This youth saw through things that even they couldn't see through. Thinking of this, he took a deep breath and calmed his churning emotions. He looked at Fingzhou and said, "You offended my daughter. First, I'll gouge out your eyes and chop off your hands. Second, from today onwards you'll become a slave of the Ruan clan." When these words were spoken, although the surrounding people were shocked, they felt that it was reasonable. For a mere foundational cultivator without a silhouette to offend a powerhouse's family, it was normal for him to be killed. After all, the power of a powerhouse was not to be offended. Not to mention gouging out his eyes and chopping off his hands. Even if he was chopped into pieces, nobody would say anything. After all, a weakling was already a weakling. No one would stand up for a weakling. Compared to having his eyes gouged out and hands chopped off, becoming a slave would save his life. However, he would have to be a slave for the rest of his life and be beaten and scolded by them. Old Master Gua, who was standing behind the Xia clan, was stunned when he heard the Ruan clan head's words. Then, he shook his head and laughed. Beside him, Gua Xining saw this and asked in a low voice, "Grandfather, what do you think they mean by this?" "I don't know what they mean, but I know that the Ruan clan is out of luck." Old Master Guo also replied in a low voice. Of all the people the Ruan clan could have offended, why did they have to offend that pervert? Did they really think that ordinary and honest-looking youth in green was a pushover that could be trampled on? They really didn't know why the Ruan clan wanted to offend him. Hearing this, the Xia clan couple looked at each other. Slave. Others didn't know, but they did. Their son had told them how he met the fourth miss of the Ruan clan. From what happened today, the Ruan clan probably had their eyes on Fingzhou. However, they had no idea what kind of person Fingzhou was. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done such a thing so suddenly. Although they didn't know Fingzhou very well, they knew that the Ruan family didn't have good intentions towards him. They guessed that he wouldn't be merciful to the Ruan family. He was someone who could make a divine beast submit to him, and someone who could make old Master Xia visit him personally. They didn't think that the Ruan family could withstand his anger. Fourth young Mistress Ruan, who was hiding beside the third young Mistress Ruan, listened to her father's words. Her lowered eyelashes trembled slightly, and her body shrunk imperceptibly. She did not dare to raise her head and only kept it lowered. A soft laugh broke the strange atmosphere. Fingzhou smiled, but there was no smile in her clear eyes. There was only playfulness and coldness. Offend? Speaking of which, how could I forget the word offend? The consequences of offending a strong person isn't something that ordinary people can bear. It's good that you know. Old Master Ruan said. He stood with his hands behind his back and stared at Fingzhou. So, do you want to have your eyes gouged out and your hands chopped off? Or become a slave? Chapter 27:15. Seeing that Ruan family head narrowed his eyes and did not speak, Fingzhou chuckled. Suddenly, he flicked his finger and a stream of air hit Ruan Si. She cried out in pain. Following her cry, she opened her mouth slightly and a pill was flicked into her mouth by Fingzhou. What did you give her to eat? Ruan family head glared angrily at Fingzhou. He could not believe that this youth was so daring. He dared to do such a thing here in front of them. Cough cough. Ruanxi coughed and bent over, trying to spit out the pill she had swallowed. Don't worry, it's not poison. Fingzhou smiled and ignored Ruan family head who was glaring at him. Instead, he looked at Ruanxi and asked, "Fourth Miss Ruan, did I bully you? Take advantage of you?" Hearing Fingzhou's sudden question, the surrounding people were slightly surprised and looked at the two of them. However, what made everyone stunned was Fourth Miss Ruan's reply. No. No. If not, why did she say that he tore her clothes and took advantage of her? Some of the youths who were originally at the Xia family's banquet widened their eyes. Fourth Miss Ruan, who heard her own reply, cried out in surprise. Just as she was about to cover her mouth, a chi blade shot out and sealed her pressure point, making her unable to move. Ruan family head stared at Fourth Miss Ruan and then stared at Fingzhou, asking, "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything. I only gave her a truth pill to make her speak the truth." Fingzhou curled the corners of his lips and spoke unhurriedly. Then, in the midst of the crowd's uproar, he asked, "Fourth Miss Ruan, who tore your clothes? Did anyone bully you or take advantage of you?" "I tore it myself. I tore it myself on purpose. No one bullied me. No one took advantage of me." When Ruanxi heard what she had said, her face turned pale and her body trembled. She wanted to stop it, but she could not. It was as if her body was under her control. She could not help but say the words in her heart. Ruanxi's face turned pale and her body trembled. "No, no, it's not like that. I didn't say that. I only wanted him to join our Ruan clan as a guest, but he wasn't willing. That's why I wanted to force him. No, it's not like that. I. The more she spoke, the more flustered she became. The crowd went into an uproar. They didn't expect it to be like this. So it turned out that she had written and directed the scene herself. She had slandered Fingzhou just because he had rejected her invitation to the Ruan family as a guest. Thinking back to when the Ruan family head said that he wanted Fingzhou to have fewer slaves in the Ruan family, everyone's hearts were slightly moved. An ordinary young man would not make them put in so much effort. Could it be that there was something unusual about this young man? For a moment, everyone's eyes fell on the young man again. He casually took out a truth pill. They had never heard of this pill here. However, the effect was obviously very good. As soon as she ate the pill, Fourth Miss Ruan herself spoke the truth. For some large families, such a pill was really good. Humph. You're really shameless. Xiao Jiu is such a good person. He even helped you and cured your hidden disease. You actually harmed him with such bad intentions. Xie Shirsi ran forward angrily. If Shai Yutang hadn't held her back, she would have rushed over and hit her. Chapter 27:16. That's right. He cured her unmentionable illness. How can she frame him like this? I heard that she had been quarantined before and was only recently brought out. Even so, she can't frame her benefactor like this. I really couldn't tell. How can such a pretty girl have such bad intentions? The voices of the surrounding people continued to speak, and the Ruan family members only felt embarrassed. Fengzhou's sealing of her acupuncture points did not last long. Ruanxi's legs went soft and she fell to the ground. Her pale face was filled with panic and fear as she looked at the Ruan family's old master, who had arrived at some point in time and was quietly watching from the side. Men. Send third miss and fourth miss home first. The Ruan family head ordered in a deep voice. His gaze was gloomy as he looked at Fingzhou. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something and looked to the side. Seeing that his father had also arrived, he could not help but be startled. Father. Why have you come? Everyone looked at the Ruan family's old master and saw him walk out with his hands behind his back. His eyes swept over Ruan-Si, who had fallen to the ground, and he frowned. He said to the men of the Ruan family, "What are you standing there for? Haven't you embarrassed yourselves enough? Bring her back." The originally pale Ruan-Si was terrified by the old master's words. She fiercely waved her hand and pushed away those who wanted to help her. She looked at her eldest brother who had followed the old master and had a complicated expression. She cried and begged, eldest brother, save me. Save me. Help me plead. I won't go back. I can't go back." The Ruan family's eldest young master looked at her with a complicated expression and said, "Fourth sister, go back with them first. It's fine." He did not know why his obedient and kind fourth sister had become like this in just a few days. Could it be that she had gone from being neglected to being treasured? Was that why she had become so unfamiliar? However, when Ruan-Si heard his words, she shook her head in fear. "No. No. Eldest brother, I can't go back. I didn't do a good job and embarrassed the family. They won't let me go. Men. Drag her back. What nonsense are you spouting?" The Ruan family's old master's expression was gloomy and ugly. He ordered people to drag her away. "No. No. I don't want to." She cried helplessly and helplessly. She looked at her family members, her grandfather, her father, her brother, and her sister. They were all looking at her with disgust and disgust. No one could save her. No one could save her. Suddenly, she stopped crying and crawled towards Fingzhou. "Brother Xiaozhou, I was wrong. I shouldn't have tried to frame you, but I had no choice. Brother Xiaozhou, save me. Grandfather wants to use me as a cultivation vessel for the family's elite disciples to cultivate. They want to lock me up. I'm scared. I'm scared of Brother Xiaozhou." Hearing this, Fingzhou's heart skipped a beat. It was as if a stone had been thrown into a calm lake, creating ripples. Her brows furrowed and her eyes grew colder. Because of the truth pill, she knew that what Ruan-Si was saying was the truth. A cultivation vessel. Because of her natural cultivation vessel constitution, her family wanted to lock her up and use her as a cultivation vessel. Until the last drop of essence blood was squeezed from her body. Chapter 27:17. What nonsense are you spouting? Old Master Ruan's face was gloomy, and his gaze was as sharp as a knife as he stared at Ruan-Si. His deep voice was old but full of energy. A powerful coercion accompanied the voice and attacked Ruan-Si. It seemed that he intended to use the coercion's powerful force to injure her so that she could no longer speak nonsense. However, Fingzhou only glanced indifferently at Old Master Ruan. She reached out and gently waved her hand, easily dispersing the pressure that attacked her. Her clear eyes were filled with mockery as she looked at Old Master Ruan. Her clear voice was cold as she said, "What? Are you angry out of humiliation? Or do you want to silence me?" When Old Master Ruan saw that the pressure was dispelled by the youth, his old face sank. His eyes were filled with anger and killing intent. "Boy, it's best if you don't meddle in other people's business. This is our Ruan family's business." His voice paused. His sharp gaze stared at his granddaughter who was hugging the youth's leg and hiding beside him. A cold light flashed through his eyes. As a disciple of the Ruan family, you should be killed for ruining the family's reputation. When old Master Ruan heard Ruanxi's words, his eyes flashed and his expression was stunned. It was as if he did not expect her to know about this matter. Actually, his father had told him about this matter. Ruanxi was a woman and had that kind of constitution. If she was used as a cultivation vessel for the elite disciples of the family to cultivate, then their Ruan family would be like the sun in the sky. From his point of view, his daughter was only used for marriage alliances. In the future, she would be married into another family. The greatest use of a daughter was to become in-laws with a large family. Even the 3 women who grew up by his side could only be reduced to tools for marriage alliances in the future, not to mention the 4th daughter who had been raised in the bamboo forest all this time and had little contact with her. Thus, when his father mentioned this matter, they had already made a decision after analyzing the benefits. However, he did not expect her to know of their plan and say it in front of so many people. For a moment, seeing the disbelieving gazes of his son and daughter, he felt somewhat angry. As a woman with that kind of constitution, being able to contribute to the family was already enough to display her greatest value. Sacrificing her in exchange for their Ruan family having as many strong people as trees in the forest, what was wrong with that? Men! Bring forth young Miss back, he said in a gloomy voice, making up his mind. Father, is 4th young Miss speaking the truth? Young Master Ruan was extremely shocked. Even his voice was trembling. He could never have imagined that things would turn out like this. He thought that it was the family's attention and flattery that caused 4th sister to change, but he didn't expect that the person who forced 4th sister to be like this was their father, their grandfather. Don't listen to her nonsense. I think she's delirious, the Ruan family head said in a deep voice without any change in his expression. When the crowd heard this, they were all shocked. They looked at the people from the Ruan clan in disbelief. Someone said, that young man just gave the Ruan 4th Miss a truth pill. She shouldn't be lying. If. Chapter 27:18. Then it's not strange. That kind of constitution is hard to come by in 100 years. Anyone would go crazy for it. Hearing the discussions of the surrounding people, the faces of the Ruan clan's patriarch and patriarch became increasingly ugly. Seeing that the Ruan clan guards were still standing there in a daze, they couldn't help but angrily shout, "What are you still standing there for? Didn't you hear that I told you to bring her back?" The Ruan clan members came back to their senses and quickly went forward. When the surrounding people saw this, they didn't say anything. After all, this was their clan's matter. It wasn't up to outsiders like them to interfere. Even if the Ruan clan's 4th young miss was really locked up and turned into a cultivation vessel, it had nothing to do with them. No, I don't want to go back, don't. Ruanxi muttered in despair. His tears blurred his vision. He was desperate and helpless. At this moment, when Xia Yan and his wife thought that Fengzhou wouldn't save the Ruan clan's 4th young miss, they saw Fengzhou's clear eyes sweep over and coldly shout, "Stop." Perhaps it was that cold shout that caused those people to involuntarily stop in their tracks. They didn't continue forward. The Ruan clan's patriarch stared at Fengzhou and asked in a deep voice, "What? Do you still want to interfere with our Ruan clan's matters?" The corner of Fengzhou's lips curled up slightly. Looking at the Ruan clan's patriarch, he said, "Ruan clan's patriarch, people of noble status often forget things. Could it be that you've forgotten that she just slandered me and you want to take her away just like that? You're thinking too simply. A mere foundation establishment cultivator. Even if I kill you, it's not too much." She only slandered you. What can you do about it? The Ruan clan's patriarch coldly snorted, not putting Fingzhou in his eyes. Is that so? She chuckled and stared at the Ruan clan's patriarch. Suddenly, she called out, Silver, move your muscles. Just as everyone was startled by her words, they heard a wolf's howl. A whoa! A deafening wolf's howl suddenly rang out. That sound soared into the sky, powerful and full of energy reverberating in the sky. When the people below heard the wolf's howl, they all cried out in alarm. They covered their ears with their hands and squatted down, looking around in horror. But when everyone saw the silver-white puppy, which was sitting not far behind Fengzhou, suddenly stand up and reveal its true form with a flash of light, they were all scared out of their wits. Heavens! It's a wolf. It's a wolf, King Wolf. Hiss. It's a divine beast level. When they saw the originally unremarkable puppy suddenly turn into a meter-tall silver wolf, they couldn't help but widen their eyes. They watched in disbelief as it revealed a ferocious expression and pounced towards the patriarch of the Ruan clan. The Ruan clan's patriarch was still wondering what the silver Fingzhou spoke of was when he saw the wolf pounce over. In an instant, he felt his entire body being covered by a huge thing. The pressure of a divine beast and its bloodthirsty aura made him forget to dodge. He could only watch in horror as the silver wolf bit down. Get out of the way! The Ruan clan's patriarch shouted. Before the silver wolf could bite the Ruan clan's patriarch, he reached out and pulled him back quickly, avoiding the silver wolf's attack. The sudden attack shocked the Ruan clan, especially Ruan Si. He stared blankly, forgetting to cry. She never thought that Fingzhou would be willing to help her. In an instant, hope rose in her heart. Chapter 27:19. Fengzhou raised her hand and gestured for the silver wolf to step aside. She walked forward and looked at them. Her clear voice was cold as she said, "Someone who can cripple all of you." As soon as she finished speaking, a powerful pressure burst out from her body. The aura of an immortal emperor was fully displayed. Just as the father and son of the Ruan clan were shocked by her strength, a green figure flashed in front of them and the Ruan clan head screamed. Ah! That blood-curdling scream pierced through the sky, causing everyone's heart to involuntarily shrink. Their hearts tightened. That green-robed youth's speed was too fast. They didn't even see how he did it. They only knew that when that blood-curdling scream rang out, he was standing beside the Ruan family head, and one of the Ruan family head's hands was twisted behind his back. What shocked them the most was that with just a glance, the Ruan family head's cultivation was actually crippled. The aura of spirit force leaked out from his body. His spirit force was flowing out, and his meridians were destroyed. It made him look as if he had aged 10 years. He tried to struggle, but he couldn't resist. When all of his spirit force was exhausted, he collapsed to the ground. Patriarch Gua and Gua Xining, who were standing among the Xie clan, were shocked when they saw this. This scene was too sudden, but it also seemed so natural. They even thought about the situation in their clan. If Patriarch Li hadn't arrived, even if he didn't kill the Li clan head, he would have been crippled. They knew that Fingzhou was very strong, but they didn't expect him to be a peak immortal emperor. After offending such a figure and provoking him with such words, it was not surprising that the Ruan family head ended up with his meridians broken and his cultivation crippled. However, they were still unable to calm down after witnessing this scene. Witnessing the family head of a large family being beaten down from a high and mighty expert to a mere mortal, and witnessing a powerhouse being turned into a cripple in an instant. This was Fengzhou's method. This was Fengzhou's strength. It was terrifying and awe-inspiring. The eldest son of the Ruan clan, Ruan San and Ruan Si, were stunned. Their father was crippled just like that. This was clearly impossible, but it happened right in front of them. Even if they didn't dare to believe it, they had no choice but to believe it was real. Compared to them, the Xia clan head was the most dumbfounded. As the Xia clan head, he didn't usually notice Fengzhou when Xia Yan was there. How could such an inconspicuous young man be a peak immortal emperor? Thinking about how such an inconspicuous young man was stronger than him, he couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat from his forehead. Fortunately, the one who offended him wasn't him, but the Ruan clan. How dare you? The old master of the Ruan family was so angry that his whole body trembled. Seeing his son, the head of the Ruan family, become a cripple like this, the anger in his body burned. The spiritual qi in his body also exploded, forming a powerful airflow that could be seen with the naked eye. Chapter 27:20. When two experts fought, one move was all it took to determine the victor. One was the old master of the Ruan clan, and the other was a young man in green. When the two of them exchanged blows, the airflow in the surrounding air also condensed, and a powerful pressure pressed down, causing those who retreated to feel a sense of suffocation. Too impulsive. Old Master Gua, who was watching from the side, shook his head and sighed softly. "Grandfather, are you referring to Fengzhou? Or the old master of the Ruan clan?" Gua Xining asked. Fengzhou is at the peak of the immortal emperor realm. With his strength, he can definitely kill his opponent instantly. If I'm talking about impulsive, I'm naturally referring to the old master of the Ruan clan. As old Master Gua spoke, he stroked his beard and said, his son was instantly crippled. This shows how strong Fengzhou is. His movements are extremely fast and impossible to guard against. He has already lost one person, and this person is the patriarch of the Ruan clan. If he calmed down, he should know that he can't fight Fengzhou, but he still attacked. Old Master Guo watched as the air currents from the two collided. With a loud bang, the old master of the Ruan clan was sent flying by Fengzhou's powerful air current. Along with his own air current, he flew dozens of meters and fell heavily to the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "Old Master! Grandfather!" The Ruan clan members cried out in alarm and quickly ran forward to help him up. They looked at the approaching young man in green in fear, afraid that he would attack again. The two strongest people in the Ruan clan, one was crippled and the other was severely injured. This young man, was he going to destroy the Ruan clan? The surroundings were silent. Everyone held their breaths and stared at the young man in green in shock. This young man was too strong, wasn't he? The two strongest men of the Ruan clan had been so easily defeated by him. The Ruan clan was in trouble this time. Even if the young man in green didn't kill the two of them, the Ruan clan would probably be reduced from a large clan to a small one. After all, the strength of a clan depended on the strong people in the clan. Now that the two strongest people in the Ruan clan were in such a state, they naturally couldn't compete with the other clans. The Ruan family was destined to go downhill. Fengzhou looked at the pale-faced old Master Ruan, who was being helped up by several Ruan family members. Her clear and cold voice came out of her mouth unhurriedly, "Strength decides everything. Even if I kill you here today, no one will dare to say anything. Am I right?" Old Master Ruan's lips moved slightly. He stared at Fengzhou, his heart in his throat. Fengzhou slowly walked forward step by step until he was in front of him. He looked down at him condescendingly. "You tell me, am I going to kill you? Or cripple you?" Hearing this, Patriarch Ruan's heart trembled, but he wasn't willing to beg for mercy. Instead, he gritted his teeth and said, "Winner takes all. If you want to kill me, do as you please." Hearing this, Fengzhou's lips curled up. Old man, you're vicious and sinister. Today, I've crippled your Wan clan's patriarch. Naturally, I can't keep you alive. When Fingzhou said this, eldest young Master Wan couldn't help but beg, I beg you to let my grandfather go. My father's cultivation has already been crippled by you. If even my grandfather is crippled, then our Wan clan. What does your Wan clan have to do with me? Fengzhou sneered. He gathered a wisp of spiritual energy in his palm and prepared to attack. Chapter 27-21. Yes, die. This old man will drag you down with me. Old Master Wan fiercely charged forward. His spiritual energy surged as if he wanted to perish together with Fingzhou. However, just as he leapt towards Fingzhou's hand was already clasped around his hand. Her other hand covered his head, dispersing his cultivation and crippling his meridians. After all, he was an old man. When he had his strength, he seemed to be full of energy. However, when his spiritual energy was crippled, his entire person aged at a speed visible to the naked eye. His face that was 50 or 60 years old became 70 or 80 years old. His waist bent and his body became thinner. His legs trembled. Only when Fingzhou withdrew her hand did he tremble and fall to the ground. When the Wan family saw this scene, they didn't know what to say. They stared blankly, shocked and in disbelief. Compared to killing you, I think crippling your cultivation will make you suffer a fate worse than death. Fengzhou's voice faintly sounded. She looked at the two people on the ground and slightly curled her lips. She slowly turned and walked towards the beautiful woman. Madam, I have to go. Thank you for taking care of me during this time. She spoke slowly and took out a box from her space. She handed it to the beautiful woman. This is a beauty pill that I refined. It's for Madam's birthday. As long as you take this pill, it will ensure that Madam's youthful appearance will never change. Hearing this, the beautiful woman was surprised and happy. She walked forward and reached out to take it. She opened it and carefully put it away. Thank you. Fengzhou glanced at the Xia siblings, who were reluctant to part with them. She smiled and took out another bottle. This bottle is for the two of them. Madam, please keep it for me. When the beautiful woman heard this, she looked at Fengzhou and nodded. Okay. She looked at her children and signaled for them to come forward and thank her. Xiaozhou. Xia Shirsi was a little sad. After spending so much time together, she couldn't bear for him to leave. I thought I would become very strong, Xia Yutang said, looking at Fengzhou and saying seriously, I will definitely become very strong. Hearing this, Fengzhou nodded and patted their shoulders. Work hard in your cultivation and take care of yourselves. As soon as she finished speaking, she took the feather from her waist and threw it out. As the feather grew bigger, she looked at the silver wolf. The silver wolf seemed to have sensed something. It shrunk from its huge size to the size of a puppy and jumped into her arms. Following the tip of her foot, she leaped onto the feather. Guanxi looked at her with pleading eyes. If he didn't take her with him, then it would be difficult for her to escape death. Come up. Fengzhou looked at her and called out. Yes, big brother Xiaozhou. Guanxi responded happily. She broke away from her third sister's hand and quickly ran to Fengzhou. She jumped onto the flying magic tool, but she didn't dare to sit down. She just stood quietly beside Fengzhou. Everyone, goodbye. She looked at the people of the Xia family and the two people of the Guo family below. Only then did she leave with the man and beast. Seeing them gradually disappear into the sky, everyone stared blankly. It took a long time for them to recover. They couldn't believe that things would end like this. Chapter 27-22. On the other side, Fingzhou brought Ruanxi to a deserted path and stopped. She said to Ruanxi, "Let's go down." Ruanxi was startled and could not help but panic. "Brother Xiaozhou. Bringing you out of that place is also saving your life. If I didn't give you a few pointers back then, perhaps you wouldn't be in such trouble today. I saved you today because I sympathized with you. However, I won't keep people I don't like by my side. Bringing you here is already the most benevolent thing I can do." She sat on the flying feather and said indifferently. She raised her hand and sent Ruanxi to the ground. She looked at the panicked Ruanxi and said, "After experiencing all these things, I think your temperament has changed. I think that even if you are alone, you can still live well after leaving those people. Brother Xiaozhou, I have never left home, much less traveled far. Now that I have no relatives, where can I go?" She could not help but panic. She did not know where else she could go. Fengzhou took out some wine and took a sip. She looked at her leisurely and said, "Going to a sect to become a disciple may be your best way out." As she said this, she took another sip of wine. "Brother Xiaozhou, why don't you let me follow you? I am willing to be your human cauldron alone." Pft. Cough cough. Fengzhou was caught off guard and choked on her wine. She coughed lightly and calmed her breathing. She glanced at Ruanxi. "Thank you very much, but I don't need it." Pft. Being her human cauldron. What use would a woman have for her? She frowned and looked at Ruanxi, who had her head lowered. "If you want to live well, hide your special body constitution well. Don't let anyone know. Otherwise, even if you enter a sect, you will be eaten alive if you are not careful." As she finished speaking, her gaze swept past the space bracelet on Ruanxi's wrist. She thought to herself, she must have kept all the things that those people gave her. After all, she knew that her clansmen wanted to do something to her. Naturally, she would not let those things leave her body. Take care of yourself. She retracted her gaze, and sat on flying feather as they headed in another direction. A few days later, in a forest, Fingzhou, dressed in red, was resting on a tree branch. His sleeves hung in the air and swayed gently with the breeze. In the forest, the silver wolf brought back the prey it had caught and placed it under a tree. Only then did it call out to its master on the tree. "Master, the meat is here, and the branches are ready." It was a majestic mythological beast, a dignified wolf king. Following by its master's side, it was only useful for hunting prey and picking up branches. Yet, it couldn't say anything. Fingzhou, who was on the tree, opened his eyes and rolled down from the sky. His red robes fluttered in the wind, and leaves swirled in the air. Just as he was about to hit the ground, he turned and landed on his toes first, standing firmly on the ground. She reached out to stroke the wolf's head and said with a smile, "Well done." She carried the prey to the water source, and after a simple treatment, she took it back and roasted it. As the fire burned, crackling sounds could be heard from the branches. Chapter 27-23. If anyone saw this, they would definitely be astonished. The ferocious beasts in the forest were all standing there and watching, but they did not dare to take a step forward. One of the golden monkeys that had jumped onto the tree even held a few fruits in one hand and swung the tree vines forward. It threw the fruits in front of its chest to Fingzhou, then jumped onto the tree and looked at her with blinking eyes. Seeing the fruit that was suddenly thrown down, Fingzhou was startled. She glanced at the monkey and picked up the fruit again. After wiping it clean, she took a bite. The sweet and crispy taste in her mouth made her squint her eyes. She said to the monkey, "Thank you." "Gee gee, gee gee." The monkey seemed to be very happy. It gestured with its hands in front of its body. Not long after, it jumped onto the tree branch and swung away. Not long after, it came back with the fruit and gave it to Fingzhou. And it's a different breed. Are there fruit trees here? Fingzhou said in surprise. She looked at the golden monkey that was squatting at the side. It seemed that the monkey was not afraid of her. It did not leave after giving the fruit, but squatted and looked at her. The silver wolf glanced at the monkey, then said to Fingzhou, "Master, there is a cliff about 500 meters away from here. There are some wild fruits growing halfway up the cliff. This monkey should have gone there to pick them." "Oh." Fingzhou nodded and placed the fruit in front of her. She said, "These fruits are quite delicious." She said to the monkey, "Go and pick some more. I'll reward you with a pill." When the monkey heard this, it squeaked and ran off not long after. It jumped on the tree branch and squeaked. Gradually, it seemed that there were more monkeys in the forest. Fingzhou smiled. She took out some spices and sprinkled them on the roasted meat. She used a small knife to cut a piece to taste and then cut another piece for Lang Lang. When she was eating the roasted meat, the golden monkey came back. What was different was that this time, it was followed by dozens of monkeys. Each of them was holding fresh fruits in their arms. Fingzhou was a little surprised to see the monkeys line up and put down the fresh fruits. They walked past her in an orderly manner and jumped onto the tree to squat. Finally, a few stronger monkeys carried a large vat and put it down in front of her. The golden monkey jumped up and down while squeaking. It pointed at the large vat and then looked at Fingzhou expectantly. Looking at this scene, her heart skipped a beat. This couldn't be. She stood up and opened the lid of the large vat. She smelled a rich wine fragrance drifting out. Smelling the rich wine fragrance, she couldn't help but take a deep breath, inhaling the wine fragrance into her body. What a fragrant monkey wine! Her eyes shone with surprise and a smile bloomed on her face. She took out a small wine cup from her space and scooped up a cup to taste it slowly. The rich spiritual power in her mouth accompanied by the extremely mellow wine fragrance spread on the tip of her tongue. As she swallowed that mouthful of wine, a burning sensation ignited in her body. As expected of the best quality monkey wine. She chuckled and looked at the golden monkey. She said, "I originally only wanted to give you an ordinary pill, but since you brought such a good monkey wine, I naturally have to give you a decent return gift." Chapter 27-24. It was a brown pill the size of a thumb. Seeing this, the monkey quickly took it and stuffed it into its mouth as if it was afraid it would be snatched away. Fengzhou just chuckled and waved his hand, collecting the monkey wine into his space. The wine brewed by monkeys was a good thing that couldn't be bought outside. This big jar of monkey wine couldn't be brewed without many years. Grandfather liked wine, so if he saw this monkey wine, he would be very happy. After the monkey got the pill and swallowed it, it quickly left, as if it was going back to its cave. The group of little monkeys also disappeared behind it. After eating in the forest, the woman and the beast got up and left. As the two of them walked forward, the ferocious beasts in front of them naturally made way for them. She walked to the cliff 500 meters away and looked down. She saw that the bottom of the cliff was filled with smoke, and she could vaguely see the endless lush forest. And the place she wanted to go, she obviously had to pass through here. Thus, she called out her flying sword and had the silver wolf shrink and go down with her. However, when she gradually descended and passed through the smoke, she faintly felt a strong restrictive force. She suddenly lost control of her spiritual power, as if it suddenly disappeared. She lost her balance and fell down. "Damn it!" she cursed in a low voice. In the smoke, there were monkeys running up and down the mountainside, squeaking. A vine was thrown down by the monkey. She immediately reached out and grabbed it to stabilize her falling body. Looking back, she saw the silver wolf jump on a stone protruding from the mountainside. After a few leaps, it landed about 50 meters away from her and looked up at her. Squeak squeak, the monkey squeaked and squatted on a big stone protruding from the mountainside, looking at Fingzhou. Fingzhou glanced at them and smiled, "Thanks." She let go of her hand and her body slid down. Her feet kicked on the side, borrowing the force to descend. About half an hour later, she reached the bottom of the cliff from the mountainside. The silver wolf jumped down and stopped at her feet. "Master, are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's just that my spiritual energy seems to have been blocked," she said with a frown. The map didn't indicate that there was a restriction here. Although she had come down, she couldn't seem to use her spiritual power. She didn't know if it was only in this area or if it was the same inside. "Let's go." As she spoke, she patted her robe and strode into the forest. Perhaps it was because there wasn't much sunlight here, but the forest was filled with a chilly air. Weeds grew everywhere, and she had to push aside the weeds that were about half a meter tall as she walked, making a path for herself. A small green snake coiled on a tree branch spat out its tongue. Its pair of ferocious and bloodthirsty eyes stared at Fingzhou. Suddenly, it leaped out and bit her neck. Fingzhou narrowed her eyes. She didn't know when a long sword appeared in her hand. With a wave of her sword, she chopped the snake into several pieces. Seeing that the snake's head was still twisting, she stabbed her sword into the ground, nailing the snake's head to the ground. Glancing at the snake, she looked at the endless forest and said to the silver wolf, "Go into the space." Before the silver wolf could respond, she had already taken it into the space. Chapter 27-25. Tun Yun was lying in a corner. Seeing that the silver wolf that had just entered had yet to form a contract with its master, it stared at it for a while, causing the silver wolf to shiver. It thought that its master only had one contracted beast, but where did all these strange animals of various sizes come from? Why were they all at the level of sacred beasts? Even a sacred beast like it had no choice but to obediently lower its head and restrain its ferociousness. It was shocked by the natural heaven and earth here, as well as the unique and pure spiritual aura. It greedily inhaled the air here, not daring to get too close to those few animals. It only obediently walked to a corner and lay down. "Hee, newcomer, no, you're not master's contracted beast yet." Lao Bai grinned, his eyes staring at the silver wolf. Wagging his tail, he walked forward step by step until he was in front of it. "Hey, get up, let's have a contest." Lao Bai used his hoof to nudge the silver wolf, indicating for it to stand up. "No, you're a sacred beast, I can't beat you," the silver wolf said very cowardly as it shrank back. Why did it feel that it was more dangerous inside than outside? "My battle strength is not strong," Lao Bai said very modestly, but his grin revealed a mouthful of white teeth, causing the silver wolf's body to tremble. Fingzhou, who was outside, did not know what they were doing inside. At this moment, she was crossing the weeds that were half the height of a person. After leaving that place, the restriction on her seemed to have disappeared, and the spiritual aura in her body had recovered. And in front of her, what appeared was not a forest of weeds, but a messy forest of towering trees. What was strange was that the leaves of these trees were all red, and there were sharp thorns on the tree trunks. As far as the eye could see, there was no end, only a stretch of red. She had just walked through the forest of weeds, so she knew a little about it. She couldn't see the end of the forest, but it was possible that there was a cloud of smoke behind the mangrove forest that blocked her vision. After all, when she looked forward through the weeds, she could only see weeds and trees, but not this strange mangrove forest. She stood there without moving and did not take another step forward because she had a feeling that as long as she took a step forward, there might be some changes. After all, this place gave her a very strange feeling, especially the sharp thorns on the old tree, which made her feel that this place was potentially dangerous. After staring ahead for a while, she took out the map and looked at it again. In the corner of this strange mangrove forest, she saw a small mark. Man-eating forest. She murmured softly, feeling a little faint. Why was it called the man-eating forest? Could it be that there were ferocious beasts in this forest? Or, her expression changed slightly, and her gaze fell on the blood-red leaves in the forest, as well as the sharp thorns on the tree trunks. It seemed that she had to go in to find out why it was called the man-eating forest. She collected her thoughts and put away the map, then walked forward. After walking 10 meters in, the surroundings were still quiet, and only the soft rustling of the leaves could be heard. Chapter 27-26. The dancing branches were like the claws of a ghost as they tried to grab her. At the same time, a large opening opened up on the tree. It looked like the mouth of the tree, and there were even sharp teeth inside. Wood at a ghost-like howl spread through the forest. The waving branches tried to send her into the mouths that were dripping with blood and juice. When Feng Jiu saw this, she brandished her azure-edged sword and slashed down. The branch that was reaching over was cut off and fell to the ground with a swoosh. However, the branch that was cut off grew a new bud and suddenly shot out to attack. There were too many branches that came out from the surroundings and they were too fast. She was unable to react in time and one of her legs was entangled. She was hung upside down in the air, and the branches below were still reaching towards her. Seeing that the branches would regrow after being chopped off by the long sword, the spiritual energy in her body surged. Her finger brushed across the Qing Feng sword, and with a whoosh, a flame abruptly sprang out and pervaded the long sword. As she swung the long sword, the flame burned, and the branches that were cut off finally stopped regrowing. The branches that were entangled around her legs wanted to throw her into the gaping mouth. She immediately cut off the branches that were entangled around her legs. At the same time, she raised her hand and a flame attacked the gaping mouth below her. Whoosh! Bang! Only the sound of flames could be heard, followed by a loud bang. The flames had burned the bloody wound into a charred black. The smell of burnt flesh permeated the air, accompanied by a foul stench. Woo! Ao! As if it was screaming, the big tree gradually withered. The dancing branches all drooped down as if they had lost their life force. After finding the Achilles heel of these trees, Fengjiu had an easier time dealing with them. In less than an hour, the trees all closed their mouths. The dancing branches also stretched back, not daring to touch her. Fengjiu glanced at it and put away the sword in her hand. She flicked her robe and brushed away the red leaves on her shoulder. Only then did she walk forward. With every step she took, the branches in front of her automatically retracted, making a path for her. It seemed that the roots of the trees could not be moved, otherwise, they would have to pull up the roots and hide to the side. In the mangrove forest, the red leaves fluttered in the wind and fell slowly. On the path created by the big tree, the red figure walked slowly as if he was stepping on the wind. His clothes fluttered and his black hair fluttered. He looked like an immortal from a painting that had fallen into the mortal world. Just his back view, which seemed to have merged with the surroundings, was already as beautiful as a painting. However, with the arrival of evening, the cold yin qi inside became more and more intense. On the ground that was covered with red leaves, wisps of ghosts suddenly floated and condensed. They followed Fengjiu just like that, wanting to get closer but unable to do so. Fengjiu, who was originally walking slowly, seemed to have sensed something. She stopped and looked back. At the same time, the wisps of ghosts quickly hid. Looking at the cold chi that permeated the quiet forest, her eyes flashed and she said coldly, "It's best that you don't follow me. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." Chapter 27:27. She continued to walk forward. As night fell, she still hadn't walked out of the mangrove forest. Thus, she found a place to sit down, lit a fire, and rested. In the deep and cold mangrove forest, it was silent. Only a cluster of flames danced in the forest. Fengjiu, who was sitting beside the fire, was dressed in red. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to tell that someone was sitting there. A group of people was walking in the forest. They could vaguely see the flames dancing in the forest. The leader paused and said to the people behind him, "There seems to be a fire over there. Could it be that someone is sleeping in the forest at night? Who would dare to sleep in here? They're really not afraid of death." A man behind said as he looked in the direction of the fire. "We've been walking around in this forest for a few days and haven't been able to get out. How about this? Let's see who's in front of us and see if the other group knows how to leave this forest." Hearing the middle-aged man's words, the people behind thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. All right. Thus, the group of people walked in that direction. The surrounding leaves automatically avoided them when they touched them. Clearly, this group of people had also taught them a lesson. Fengjiu was drinking monkey wine under a tree when she heard footsteps coming in her direction. She narrowed her eyes and looked in the direction of the footsteps. Not long after, she saw more than 20 torches moving in the forest. At first glance, the dancing flames really looked like the wisps in the night. Those people looked like that to her, but how could she not look like that to those people? When they walked towards the flames, they saw the flames burning on the ground from afar. When they looked again, they only saw a human head staring at them. In the middle of the night, when the head suddenly looked at them like that, it scared the two men who ran in front and wanted to see what was going on. They instinctively put up a defensive posture and shouted at the same time. "What the hell?" Fengjiu was startled. She glanced at those people with a strange expression. Then, she looked down at her red clothes and chuckled. "I'm not a ghost." Hearing the laughter, the two men still felt their hair stand on end. Only when they focused their eyes did they see that it was a young man wearing a red robe. The previous blurry image became clear at this moment, allowing them to put down their worries. "I thought it was some kind of ghost. It gave me a fright. Why did I only see a head staring at us? What the hell?" one of the men muttered. As they walked closer, a pair of eyes sized up Fengjiu. "Don't be presumptuous." The middle-aged man in the lead shouted with a sullen face. He glanced at the man, who still wanted to say something. Only then did the man shut his mouth and retreat to the back. The middle-aged man looked at the young man in red and hid the surprise in his eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Sir, please don't take offense. My brother means no harm." Fengjiu smiled and looked at the middle-aged man who spoke. "It's fine." She continued to drink the monkey wine and carefully tasted it. Hearing this, the middle-aged man asked, "Sir, are you alone? Would it be possible for us to join you?" Chapter 27:29. Have a seat. "We'll leave when the sun rises," Fengjiu said as he played with the white jade gourd in his hand. He did not look at them again. When the middle-aged man heard him, he waved his hand and gestured for the people behind him to rest here. Then, another bonfire was lit. One of them even set up a defensive array around it. My surname is He, and my name is Shan Shu. How should I address you? The middle-aged man asked as he sat down beside the bonfire in front of the young man. You can call me Ninth Young Lord, Fengjiu said without even looking up. He Shu nodded when he heard that. Ninth Young Lord, you're here alone. Where are you going? Fengjiu looked up and glanced at him. A smile appeared on his face. He said half-truthfully, I'm bored and have some fun. Everyone from the He family was stunned. Have some fun and have some fun. Who would believe that? This was not a place to have fun. They could die here if they were not careful. However, when He Shu wanted to ask more questions, she saw the young man in front of her play with the white jade gourd and hang it on his waist. He leaned back against the tree and fell asleep. Looking at the tree again, it was obviously sharp, but it was shaved flat. The whole tree was wilted as if it had died. Seeing that He Shu had no intention of talking, he did not say anything else. He got up and walked back to the group. He sat down among them and said to everyone, let's take the time to rest. We still have a long way to go tomorrow. Surprisingly, nothing happened that night. Fengjiu opened his eyes in the middle of the night. He only saw a few spirits floating around, but they did not dare to go near. Well, these people's strength and aura were so strong. How could a few spirits dare to go near them? They had a good night's sleep until the next morning. The fire was extinguished. She used water to wash her face and rinse her mouth. She tidied her clothes and took out some fruits to eat. Then, she looked at the He family's team. Everyone quickly got up and formed the team in a few seconds. She raised her eyebrows. When she saw He Shu walking over, she said, let's go. She walked in front and led them forward. Everyone in the group looked at each other. Among them, a man walking at the back could not help but mutter, this ninth young master is so young, and he doesn't look very strong. Can he really walk out of this damned forest? Are you trying to trick us? The man next to him smiled and said in a clear voice, I don't think so. He dares to come here alone, so he is not an ordinary person. That's true. If an ordinary person were to come to this place, they would have died long ago. The man nodded in agreement. So, he stopped talking and quietly walked behind while paying attention to the surrounding movements. After walking for 2 hours, they saw that the red-clothed youth in front of them had been eating fruits in his hand. Hearing the crisp sound of chewing, the people behind him couldn't help but feel envious. Coming to this place was not as casual as coming back home. For things like fruits, they could only look for wild fruits in the forest. However, the wild fruits that they found were usually so sour that their teeth fell off. However, the ones that the young man in front of them was eating were sweet and juicy, causing them to salivate from time to time. Chapter 27:30. Because of this, when he suddenly stopped, they were all stunned. They asked in confusion, what's wrong? Why aren't we moving? Fengjiu, who was in front, turned around and looked at them calmly. He smiled and said, we're already out of the forest. Everyone, do as you please. As he spoke, he flicked his robes and leaped away like a gentle breeze, leaving behind the crowd with their eyes wide open in astonishment. They looked around and muttered in surprise, we're out. How did we get out? We've been walking for a few days and we still haven't gotten out of that damned place. How did we get out this time? He Shu looked at the young man in red who had disappeared and muttered softly, sure enough, those who enter this place are not ordinary people. No wonder the young man dared to enter this place alone. This person's cultivation level must be far above theirs. Otherwise, why would he be traveling alone? Alright, let's continue on our way. He turned around and said. Then, he led the group forward. Fengjiu stepped on the breeze and headed into the forest. He was free and did not have to wait for anyone. His speed was much faster than before. He followed the directions on the map and did not take any detours. After a few days, he arrived at the center of the island where the ladder to immortality was. This is it, right? She muttered softly. Her red figure floated down and looked at her surroundings. She was surrounded by mountains on all sides. The mountains were so tall that they seemed to reach into the clouds. The place she was standing on was completely empty. Even large rocks were hard to find, let alone trees. However, in the middle of the island, there was a green lake. Above the lake, smoke rose in spirals. She could vaguely see lotus flowers blooming in the lake. She could not help but let out a soft cry of surprise. She walked up to the side of the lake and looked at it. The lake water was green and the surface was clear. However, on the surface of the lake, there were golden lotus flowers blooming. The lotus flowers shone with a golden light and condensed spiritual power. When she counted them carefully, there were exactly 9 golden lotuses. 9 by 9. These golden lotuses are strange. She muttered softly. Her gaze swept across the lotuses and landed on the lotus heads. The lotus seeds looked very plump. This lake is strange. I wonder if it can be kept in the space. What about becoming a scenery in her space? She made up her mind and stared at the green lake. Seeing that there was no one around, she walked around and looked around carefully. The water source of the lake was most likely the geocentric water of the Penglai Immortal Island. If that was the case, it would be difficult to move it into the space, and it would consume a lot of spiritual power. However, if he only plucked the golden lotus and didn't move the lake, he felt that it would be a waste. Thus, she thought for a moment and finally decided to move the lake into her space. In any case, her space was a world of its own. No matter how much water there was, it could accommodate it. She immediately took action. She used her spiritual energy as a guide, and with a thought, the surrounding aura instantly changed. The surface of the lake in particular trembled slightly and ripples spread out. Chapter 27:31. All the experts who were heading towards this place felt that the entire center of the island was shaking. They couldn't help but be shocked and ask what was going on. However, they were still very far from the center of the island. Even if they wanted to know, they couldn't do anything. They were shocked and felt that something must have happened in the center of the lake. But what else could have happened there? Could it be that the stairway of immortality had appeared in advance? Thinking of this, they sped up and headed towards that place. However, as they hurried, they found that the center of the island no longer shook. It was as if it had calmed down and returned to normal. Even so, they were only stunned for a moment before they hurried towards that place. In the center of the island, the lake in front of Fengjiu was only left with a deep hole. It was as if it had dried up and there wasn't a single drop of water left. Even Fengjiu, who had been standing at the side, had disappeared. At this time, Fengjiu was actually swept into the lake in the space. When she drew the water into the space, a huge white python appeared in the end. When the white python was drawn into the space along with the water, it curled its tail and pulled her in as well. In the space, she climbed out of the lake with a wet body. In her hand, she was still holding a dagger. The blood on the dagger had been washed clean by the lake water. It was as clean as before. Several contracted beasts were standing by the lake. When they saw her come out, they hurriedly pulled her and asked, "Master, how are you?" Are you hurt? Ah. Master, look, the blood of the white python has disappeared. White exclaimed and pointed at the gradually disappearing blood in the lake. Fengjiu sat on the side and looked back. She saw that the blood of the white python that she had killed was disappearing little by little. The lake water was as green as before. If it weren't for the floating corpse of the white python, one wouldn't have been able to tell that it had been stained with blood just now. Go and get the corpse out. Don't dirty the water. Fengjiu gestured. After putting away the dagger, she took out an elixir and swallowed it. She didn't expect that there would be such a white python here. At that time, after the white python dragged her in, it forced her into the water and opened its mouth to swallow her. Therefore, she killed it without thinking. She had used up too much of her spiritual power, and after the battle underwater, she was exhausted. Thus, after changing out of her wet clothes, she told the contract beasts, "Don't touch the golden lotus." Then, she fell into a deep sleep. When she fell asleep, her contract beasts were so scared that they stayed by her side and didn't dare to leave. Only after she had rested enough to recover her spiritual power did she wake up. When she woke up, she realized that she had slept for 3 days. However, she thought for a moment. 3 days inside was only 1 day outside. Thus, she was in no hurry to leave. Instead, she began to study the golden lotus. Could it be that Elder Tianji wanted me to come to the Immortal Ascension Stairs because of this? After all, she had the ancient green lotus in her body, and this golden lotus didn't look simple either. She frowned slightly and thought about Elder Tianji's half-spoken words. She couldn't help but cross her arms and stare at the golden lotus in deep thought. Finally, her eyes flashed and she revealed a smile. Whether or not he came for this golden lotus, it's true that this golden lotus is a good thing. If it's used to refine elixirs, what kind of elixirs will it produce? She muttered softly and couldn't help but look forward to it. Chapter 2732. She took a lotus seed and ate it. She felt the spirit energy in her mouth multiply. Her cultivation that had been stuck at the peak of the immortal emperor realm actually showed signs of a breakthrough. Her heart trembled. She couldn't help but put away the lotus seed. Then, she went to a place and sat down cross-legged to cultivate. The spirit energy in her body surged like water flowing into the sea. It stirred up waves in her body. The surging spirit energy expanded her meridians. Her meridians expanded once again. Spirit energy poured into her dantian. Every pore on her body stretched and frantically absorbed the spirit energy in this space. Not only were the veins in her body expanding, but even the green lotus in her body was crazily absorbing spiritual energy. If it weren't for the green lotus, she would have exploded and died from the spiritual energy that was surging into her body. Her frantic absorption of spirit energy caused the several contract beasts in the space to be horrified. However, they remembered their master's orders. Thus, they only stood in the distance and watched. They didn't approach. In this world, the clouds in the sky churned. Spirit energy surged from below. Fengjiu, who was sitting cross-legged, a powerful aura and pressure spread out. The spirit energy that could be seen with the naked eye tightly wrapped around her. Gradually, the contract beasts in the distance couldn't see her figure. Kacha! Boom! Lightning flashed through the sky as if it wanted to strike down at Fengjiu. Immediately after that, a thunderclap struck down from the sky and descended onto Fengjiu, who was sitting cross-legged. A powerful airflow surged out from the thunderclap and whistled through the air blades. Ah! A miserable scream came from Fengjiu's mouth. Her red robe was scorched by the heavenly thunder and faintly emitted a charred smell. The powerful wind blades seemed to be dismembered. Her robe and skin were cut open. Streams of blood seeped out. It was a ghastly sight. The azure lotus in her body revolved and gradually grew bigger. Petals bloomed. A faint azure aura and pure spirit energy pervaded her body. However, it didn't heal her injuries. Gotcha! Boom! Another bolt of lightning flashed by, and the heavenly thunder struck Fengjiu's body with a rumble. In an instant, another blood-curdling scream was heard. Fengjiu's sweat mixed with the blood on her body. This heavenly lightning was different from the previous ones. Every heavenly lightning caused her flesh, bones, and blood to suffer great pain. Her skin cracked open, and the sparks from the heavenly lightning burned her flesh. One could imagine the pain she was in. However, the most unbearable thing for her was that the tendons and veins in her body were being stretched inch by inch. It was as if someone was chopping at her tendons and bones with a sharp knife. The pain penetrated her bones and reached her heart. Crack! Boom! When the third bolt of heavenly lightning struck her, she coughed up a mouthful of blood. Her body was on the verge of collapsing. It was as if her divine sense had floated up and entered a faintly discernible place. When the people outside arrived at the center of the island, they saw that the surroundings were calm as usual, as if nothing had happened. However, when their gazes landed on the dried-up lake, they could not help but cry out in surprise. Chapter 27:33. The cultivators who had rushed over all stared at the dried lake in front of them with wide eyes and mouths agape. They couldn't close their mouths, as if they were stuffed with duck eggs. That lake was formed from the water in the heart of the island. It had been formed for many years, and the lake was not shallow. Moreover, there was a white python at the level of a divine beast guarding the golden lotuses. Many experts who wanted to pluck the golden lotuses often lost their lives in the lake. But now, not only was the golden lotuses gone, even the water in the lake and the white python were gone. All that was left was a dried-up big hole. How could they not be dumbfounded? But besides them, there was no one else here. Moreover, they had just rushed over. Even if they hadn't just arrived, they didn't have the ability to dry up the lake. For a moment, all the cultivators stood there with their eyes wide open. They couldn't figure out what was going on. In the space, Fengjiu was still in the process of advancing. This time, the advancement had already lasted for several days. After 3 bolts of heavenly lightning fell, the clouds in the sky still hadn't dispersed. At this time, a thunderous voice was echoing in Fengjiu's mind. The Heavenly Tao's 3 questions. The first question, what is the Heavenly Tao? These words resounded in Fengjiu's mind. That voice went straight to the depths of her soul, shaking her ears until they hurt. The Heavenly Tao's 3 questions. The first question, what is the Heavenly Tao? She tried her best to calm down and ignored the sharp pain in her spine. Instead, she seriously pondered, what is the Heavenly Tao? The Tao of immortality, the Tao of longevity, is regarded as the Heavenly Tao. However, there is only one Tao of immortality. But every cultivator's path and circumstances are different. Different lives have different answers. What is the Heavenly Tao? There are thousands of answers, but only one belongs to me. Using the right heart to compete with the heavens. What is the Heavenly Tao? I am the Heavenly Tao. She heard her cold voice that contained a powerful pressure reverberate in the sky. Just as she finished speaking, a loud rumbling sound rang out in the sky. It was like the rumbling of thunder, and it also sounded like tens of thousands of beasts were galloping over. It was so aggressive that it shook people's hearts. The clouds rolled and the thunder continued. The voice in the sky seemed to be silent for a moment. In the next moment, the clouds stopped and the sound of thunder came again. The Heavenly Tao's 3 questions. The second question, why did you embark on the Tao of immortality? As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Jiu immediately said, in order to become a supreme martial artist. To protect the people I want to protect. The moment she finished speaking, another thunderous rumble echoed out. Not long after, everything became quiet once more, and that person's voice rang out for the 3rd time. The Heavenly Tao's 3 questions of Chapter 2734. The green lotus that was originally in her body appeared under her seat for some reason. The green lotus bloomed, and the lotus seat emitted a gentle green light. A small blooming green lotus accompanied by a gentle green light appeared between her eyebrows, forming a lotus mark. The edges of each petal of the green lotus were floating with a golden light. The golden and green light complemented each other, making her originally exquisite and beautiful face look even more elegant and otherworldly. She was so beautiful that she was like an immortal who did not belong to the mortal world. Just one look at her was enough to make people lose their minds. The contract beasts stared at this scene in a daze. They watched as the aura in the surroundings gradually dissipated and returned to normal. Finally, Lao Bai cheered happily, "That's great. Master has advanced. And she has become more beautiful." As he spoke, his saliva flowed out, but he sucked it back in. The aura in her body calmed down, and Fengjiu slowly opened her eyes. Her strength had advanced another level, from the peak of the immortal emperor realm to the divine god realm. She could feel that her state of mind seemed to have changed a little. She stretched out her hand and saw that the cut skin had recovered to its original state. Her skin was like ice and jade, white and flawless. When she stood up, she saw the tattered robe hanging on her body. Seeing this, she smiled slightly, turned around, and changed into a set of red robes. "Master, Master, you have become more beautiful." Lao Bai was the first to run forward, and he circled around her to look at her. "Congratulations, Master, for advancing again. Congratulations, Master, for breaking through to the divine god realm. Congratulations, Master." The contract beasts thanked her one after another. They looked at their master with joy, and there was a faint sense of pride and satisfaction in their hearts. Only the silver wolf was a little anxious and worried. It had not been contracted yet. Now that Master had advanced again, would Master not want it anymore? For a moment, it was nervous. Fengjiu slowly walked towards the spirit spring and looked at her reflection in the water. Her red dress made her look even more outstanding and enchanting, especially the golden lotus between her eyebrows. It was so lifelike that it made her look even more noble and extraordinary. Her fingers gently stroked the green lotus between her eyebrows. With a thought, her glabella burned and the golden-rimmed green lotus disappeared. Her fingertips moved and a cluster of flames leaped up. The flames danced between her fingers, making her feel a steady flow of spiritual energy in her body, as well as a different feeling from before. So this is what it feels like to be at the heavenly deity realm. Indeed, we are on a completely different level, a completely different world. Her voice rang out slowly, neither fast nor slow, as if it came from the horizon, faintly discernible. "Master." The contract beasts looked at her. Seeing her eyebrows move slightly, they turned around and sat down cross-legged. "Don't disturb me." After Fengjiu said this, she closed her eyes. This time, it was not the spiritual energy in her body that surged, but the aura of Xian energy. Seeing that she was about to advance again, the contract beasts quickly retreated and squatted at a distance to watch her. Master had just entered the heavenly deity realm. Even if she advanced again, it should be the improvement of her Xian Qi cultivation. Chapter 27:35. When she appeared in the crowd's line of sight, all the cultivators were sizing her up. Most of the cultivators here were accompanied by a few people. After all, even the most confident cultivators wouldn't come here alone. However, they saw a young man in red standing here alone. Most importantly, this person was so young, and his appearance and bearing were so extraordinary. Fingjiu ignored the gazes of the crowd and stared at the big hole in front of her. She walked to the edge of the hole and blinked when she saw that there was no more water inside. "Little friend, are you here for the immortal ascension stairs as well?" An old man walked out and asked, his gaze landing on Fingjiu. "Yes." Fingjiu nodded and said, "I heard that very few people can climb the immortal ascension stairs, so I thought I'd come to watch the show." Hearing this, the crowd finally understood. So he was just here to watch the show. That was more like it. If he was here to attempt to ascend the immortal ascension stairs, with his age and cultivation level, he wouldn't be qualified to do so. "I heard that only immortal emperors can climb the immortal ascension stairs." The old man stroked his beard and looked at the sky. Hearing this, Fingjiu looked at him and asked, "Old friend, with your immortal venerable cultivation, do you want to give it a try as well?" When the old man heard this, he couldn't help but be startled. Then, he smiled. He didn't expect this young man to call him old friend when he called him little friend. He stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Of course I want to give it a try. Although only immortal emperors can climb the immortal ascension stairs, isn't the Tao of immortality also a struggle against the heavens? Rumor has it that 100 years ago, a cultivator with the strength of an immortal sovereign broke through halfway up the immortal ascension stairs and ascended to the heavenly stairway. The cultivators waiting here naturally want to compete with Tian Yi and compete with him. Then when will the immortal ascension stairs appear?" She looked around and saw about 100 cultivators sitting on the ground. Some were sitting cross-legged, some were resting with their eyes closed, and some were observing their surroundings. "It should be soon," the old man said slowly. Then, he suddenly asked, "Little friend, are you alone?" Fingjiu smiled and said, "One person is enough." "Ha ha ha, little friend, you are very confident." The old man paused and looked at Fingjiu meaningfully, "You are also very capable. To be able to come here alone, this was no small feat." Fingjiu smiled and said, "I was just lucky. Little friend, why don't you come and sit with us?" The old man turned his body, up to 10 cultivators, who were sitting of a dozen cultivov of the Immerse group. Fingjiu glanced at them and thought for a while. Then, he nodded and said, "That's fine." Then, he walked over with the old man. When the members of the old man's family saw that the young man had arrived with their old ancestor in such a relaxed and indifferent manner, they couldn't help but be slightly startled. They were surprised that their old ancestor would actually treat this young man differently. After carefully sizing up the young man, they couldn't help but secretly praise him. What an elegant young man. This young man was dressed in red, and his face was as handsome as a celestial being. His bearing was outstanding, and there was a hint of nobility about him. Although his strength was not great, his appearance and bearing were enough to make people treat him differently. Chapter 27:36. Great Ancestor. They bowed to their great ancestor, and their gazes landed on the young man. "Go rest yourselves." The old man waved his hand, telling them not to be restrained and to rest. "Yes." The cultivators responded, then took a few steps back and sat down again. Some sat cross-legged to cultivate, while others sat cross-legged to meditate. "Young friend, do you know how to play chess?" the old man asked with a smile. "A little," Fengzhou said. "That's good. Since we have nothing to do, let's play chess to pass the time." The old man took out a small four-legged table and placed it between the two of them. He then took out a set of chess pieces and handed a white one to Fengzhou. Fengzhou didn't say anything else. She just sat on a round piece of wood and placed the white chess piece first. Then, she started playing chess with the old man. When the two of them first started, the old man's expression was normal, and his speed of placing pieces was not slow. However, as more and more pieces were placed on the board, his speed clearly slowed down. Just like now, when it was his turn, he held a piece and thought for a long time, unable to place it down. Fengzhou wasn't in a hurry. He quietly watched, and when he saw that the old man was indeed slow, he took out some wine from his space and asked, "Old friend, do you want a drink?" No, I haven't thought about how to play this move." The old man didn't even look up. After thinking for a long time, he finally placed his piece. Just as he was about to look up and tell the young man that it was his turn, he saw that the white piece had already been placed. Looking at the white piece, he widened his eyes and asked, "You don't even need to think about how to play chess." "Usually, I don't," Fengzhou said with a smile. At the same time, he raised his head and drank a mouthful of wine. He saw that the old man was still hesitating. When he placed his piece down again, Fengzhou placed his piece down as well. "You've lost." Fengzhou smiled and looked at Hazy, who had nowhere to go, as she spoke to the old man. The old man blew his beard and said, "Again." As he sorted the black and white pieces, he said, "I've never met a worthy opponent in chess. How can I lose to you?" "Actually, I only lost by half a piece," Fengzhou said with a smile as he pushed the divided pieces in front of the old man. "Why don't you take the white piece?" No, I'm fine with the black piece. Let's play again." He gestured and continued. "So." Fengzhou, the old man looked at Fengzhou and sighed. This. Hearing this, the old man smiled and removed the chessboard. He looked at Fengzhou and asked, "How should I address you, young friend?" "Ninth young master." The old man was slightly stunned, then he smiled. "Then I'll just call you young friend." As the two of them chatted, Fengzhou learned that the old man had been stuck at the venerable immortal level for a long time. Seeing that there was no hope for him to advance in his family, he wanted to try the stairway of immortality. "Ninth young master." A surprised voice called out. Fengzhou, who was chatting with the old man, was startled. He turned around and saw that it was the people from the team they met in the mangrove forest. Chapter 2737. On the way here, the ninth young lord was alone. That meant that he was not with the old man. However, seeing that they were sitting together, they must have met on the way here. Fengzhou nodded and glanced at the group behind him. "Looks like you guys are not slow either." Hearing this, Shu smiled. "Luckily, we met the ninth young lord on the way here. If not, we probably would not have reached here." "Oh." The old man looked at Fengzhou and smiled. "My friend, did you help others on the way here? Do I not look like someone who would help others?" Fengzhou raised his eyebrows. Ha, that's not what I meant. I just didn't expect it." The old man raised his head and laughed. After all, the group was not weak. If they needed this young man to save them, it meant that his intuition was right. This young man was not ordinary. Shu asked the group to sit on the side and sat down next to them. It's rare to meet someone familiar here. However, the ninth young lord, why did you come to the stairway of immortality? Don't tell him that the ninth young lord also wanted to try the stairway of immortality. Feng Jiu smiled and said, this old friend just asked me the same question, and now you're asking me again. Since we're here, what do you want to do? Naturally, I want to do the same. There's no need to ask this question. He Shu was stunned. Then, he laughed out loud. Yes, I was foolish. Come, let me apologize to the ninth young lord. He took out some wine from his space and poured 3 cups. He said to the old man and Fengzhou, elder, the ninth young lord, I'll drink first. As he spoke, he raised his cup and drank it in one gulp. When the old man saw this, he raised his cup and gestured to the 2 of them. He took a sip and put it down. Fengzhou liked wine too. When he saw the wine poured by others, he raised his cup and tasted it. Although it was good wine, it was still not as good as her hidden wine. As they waited for the immortal ascension stairs to appear, they sat in a circle and chatted with each other. Occasionally, some teams would come by and ask about the dried-up lake. However, no one knew what was going on. Speaking of which, it's strange. There was originally a lake here. Who would have thought that when we arrived, it had already dried up? Even the golden lotus in the lake had disappeared. There was also the white python in the lake. You should know that the white python had eaten many cultivators who had set their sights on the golden lotus. As the old man spoke to them, he looked at the empty lake in front of them and said, those golden lotuses are good stuff. It said that the lotus seeds are treasures that can increase one's strength, but no one knows where those golden lotuses have gone. When Fengzhou heard this, he coughed uncomfortably and said, perhaps it was plucked by someone, or perhaps the lake has long dried up, so the golden lotus is long gone. The white python in the lake is at the level of a divine beast. Moreover, it's huge in size and has extraordinary battle prowess. I don't know why it disappeared at this time. Otherwise, maybe we can find out what happened? As the old man spoke, he stroked his beard and looked ahead. However, when his gaze landed in front of him, his eyes suddenly shone with joy. He stood up and pointed forward, exclaiming excitedly, look! It's the immortal ascension stairs. The immortal ascension stairs have appeared. Chapter 2738. This is the immortal ascension ladder. Fengzhou stared at the scene in front of him in astonishment. This ladder seemed to be formed by clouds and extended down from the sky. That's right, this is the immortal ascension ladder. The old man's expression changed slightly. Not long after, the immortal ascension ladder extended to the ground. One end was connected to the ground while the other end disappeared into the clouds. It was as if there was no end to it. While they were talking, someone had already stepped onto the immortal ascension ladder. Then, more than 10 cultivators rushed up. Among them, Fengzhou saw that there were even immortal emperors. Young friend, I'll take my leave first. The old man cupped his fists at Fengzhou and said something to his clansmen. Then, he walked up the immortal ascension ladder. Ninth young lord, goodbye. He Shu also cupped his fists and led his group up the immortal ascension ladder. Feng Jiu watched them leave. Just as she was about to step forward, she caught a glimpse of a group of people coming over from the corner of her eye. She took a closer look and saw that the group was from the Xia clan. Xia Yan and his father, Old Master Xia, were among them. However, looking at the people in this group, they looked a little tired. It was obvious that the journey here had not been easy. Father, it seems like we came at the right time. The immortal ascension ladder has really appeared. Xia Yan said to his father. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a miserable scream was heard. A figure fell down from the immortal ascension ladder. His body was covered in blood and he looked like he was on the verge of death. This scene shocked the people below. The expressions of the people from the other clans changed when they saw the miserable state of that person. Was this the result of not being able to climb the immortal ascension ladder? This was indeed fighting against the heavens, gambling with one's life. The faces of the Xia clan's people turned ugly when they saw this scene because that person just happened to fall in front of them. Looking at the miserable state of that cultivator, Xia Yan's body trembled slightly. He looked at his father and said, "Father, I'll go up with you. Let's do what we can. As long as we feel that we can't go up anymore, we'll come down." Immortal Ascension Stairway. Actually, those who had climbed the Immortal Ascension Stairway before all knew that for every step after the 100th step, one's strength would change as well. However, after the 100th step, the Immortal Ascension Stairway was even more difficult to climb. Those who could not withstand the pressure would be knocked down. The clan wanted to recruit experts to assist them, yet they didn't dare to come personally. Hence, they could only send these branch family members with outstanding strength to take the risk. How could they not know that the Immortal Ascension Stairs was akin to the King of Hell's talisman? Careful with every step, he fell from the sky to hell. When he thought about how his father's goal was to fight against the heavens, he couldn't help but feel his heart tighten. He was afraid that his father would be like that cultivator who fell down the Immortal Ascension Stairs, going up alive only to come down on the verge of death. Old Master Xia sighed and looked at the Immortal Ascension Stairs. "I have tried climbing this Immortal Ascension Stairs before. The first 100 meters is safe. You can try the next 10 steps after that." He turned around and said in a deep voice, "Let's go. If you don't try, how do you know if you can do it?" Chapter 2739. It was a young man. He didn't look very old, but his red robe was extremely dazzling, and his temperament was incomparably noble. When he turned his head slightly to look at them, his handsome face that was like a celestial being was reflected in their eyes. When they saw him, they couldn't help but secretly praise, "What an outstanding young man." When they saw the young man looking at them, they nodded their heads slightly. Then, they gathered their thoughts and walked up the Immortal Ascension Stairs. However, not long after they stepped onto the Immortal Ascension Stairs, they saw the handsome young man in red following behind them. His steps were leisurely and his expression was calm. His actions exuded a sense of laziness, and he didn't seem nervous at all. It was as if he wasn't walking up the Immortal Ascension Stairs, but rather, he was taking a stroll in his own backyard. "Father, that young man is coming up too," Xia Yan said to his father beside him. Old man Xia turned to look and said, "Strong cultivators tend to keep a low profile. Maybe this young man already has the qualifications to climb the Immortal Ascension Stairs. Those who are able to come up here are all extraordinary people. We can't treat them like normal people." Hearing this, Xia Yan calmed himself down and replied, "Yes. Wasn't that right?" Back then, who would have thought that the Fengzhou they met on the way here would be such a strong cultivator? That young man's appearance was obviously not outstanding. His green robes were also very low profile. His actions and words were like those of an ordinary child. However, time after time, that young man had exceeded everyone's expectations. Also, because of that young man, his son was able to obtain a divine beast at such a young age. Now, even if the father and son were not in the clan, they could rest easy. They walked forward. Every step they took felt like they were stepping on cotton. They had to gather their spiritual energy and use it to walk. Therefore, every step on the Immortal Ascension Stairs was not easy. "Ah! Another cry of surprise was heard, and another figure fell from a high place. When the Xia father and son saw the figure rolling down the celestial staircase, they immediately dodged to the side to avoid being knocked down. As soon as the two of them dodged, they thought of the red-robed young man behind them and couldn't help but turn back to look. They saw that the red-robed young man was trying to step on the celestial staircase. With one step, he sank halfway down the staircase, then pulled himself out. When he stepped down again, they didn't know if it was a problem of strength or something else, but the red-robed young man's entire body sank in. He could only use his elbows to support himself. His entire body hung in the air and swayed. Just when they thought that the youth would fall down, they saw the youth move to the left and easily avoid the falling cultivator. Then, he climbed up from the cloud ladder and continued to climb up after steadying himself. Seeing this scene, whether it was the father and son of the Xia clan who were looking down from the celestial staircase or the cultivators who were standing guard below, ready to catch people if they fell, they were all dumbfounded. Why did it feel like this young man went up to play? That leisurely swaying figure, that footsteps that stopped every 3 steps, when would it come to an end? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.